Between 2002 and 2013, WWE boasted 2 major world titles. Every figurehead needs a good second in command, and while the WWE Championship remained the biggest title in wrestling, the World Heavyweight Championship was never far behind. Not so much Batman and Robin, but rather Batman and a marginally smaller Batman. First, a quick history lesson. In 2001, as we all know, Vince McMahon crushed WCW beneath his mighty boots and absorbed their assets. One such asset was the WCW title, which was unified with the WWF Championship at Vengeance. Chris Jericho beat The Rock and Austin in the same night and stood atop the wrestling world. Well, until Triple H destroyed him at WrestleMania in a feud about shared custody of a dog. The Undisputed Championship made its way to Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, and The Rock before eventually falling into the hands of the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. And then the brand split happened. SmackDown GM Stephanie McMahon convinced Lesnar to sign an exclusive deal with her brand, leaving Raw without a top champion. But as the Monday Night Wars taught us, there's nobody better in a crisis than Eric Bischoff. Now general manager of Raw, Bischoff created the World Heavyweight Championship, represented by the famous big gold belt that had been worn by NWA and WCW world champions over the years. Certainly a strong start. But what did Bischoff do next? Did he hold a tournament for the vacant title? Did he book a huge battle royal featuring everyone on the Raw roster? Did he invent a league competition over the next few weeks? Or did he just give it to Triple H? What do you think? Yes, Bischoff awarded the title to the most cerebral of assassins, his excuse being that the game had been Lesnar's #1 contender before the split. Triple H became the first of 25 World Heavyweight Champions, and just because we know you love these big lists, we're going to rank all of them from worst to best. A quick disclaimer, this is purely a ranking of WWE's World Heavyweight Champions, not holders of the big gold belt in WCW, but maybe we'll do that as a future list. So without any further ado, I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic.com, and this is every World Heavyweight Champion ranked from worst to best. Join us! Number 25, the Great Khali. If you asked a complete non-wrestling fan to place Khali on this list, they'd probably put him somewhere near the top. After all, why would a terrifying 7-foot behemoth be a worse champion than a short, hairy environmentalist who shouts yes a lot? Khali certainly had the look, but one small factor prevented him from being a good wrestler. He couldn't really wrestle. When the title was vacated in mid-2007 due to injury, a 20-man battle royal was hastily scheduled for later the same night. The match featured powerhouse favorites such as Batista and Kane, as well as exciting dark horses like Matt Hardy, Mark Henry, and MVP. Instead, the Great Khali won and embarked on a 2-month reign of terror. Look, we realize that wrestling isn't just about work rate, but you don't have to be a mid-2000s Ring of Honor fan to realize that this was a bad idea. Khali defended the title in a series of clunky, clumsy matches, often getting himself disqualified to keep the gold. He finally lost it in a triple threat match at Unforgiven after taking a devastating spine buster. Number 24, Jack Swagger. Jack Swagger is, of course, a former 5-star wrestling champion, and it's easy to forget the fact that he also held WWE's World Heavyweight Championship. So great was the magnitude of that legendary 5-star reign. Unfortunately, even before Swagger held the big gold belt, his reign was foreshadowed by bad omens. He won the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 26, taking an ungodly amount of time to unhook the briefcase. Then, the night after WrestleMania, Swagger almost cashed in on WWE champion John Cena. At the last second, he realized what the hell he was doing and backed off, probably a wise decision given Cena's status as the most indestructible substance on planet Earth. On SmackDown, Swagger enjoyed better luck, successfully cashing in on a weakened Chris Jericho. He then gave possibly the most boring reaction of any wrestler to win their first world title. I've seen people celebrate harder when they realize it's Thursday, not Friday, Thursday. Swagger wasn't actually bored. This was supposed to be the beginning of an ultra-serious heel character, but his title reign was abandoned after 79 days of underwhelming crowd reactions. He eventually dropped the title in a Fatal 4-Way at Fatal 4-Way. Multi-man title matches are often used to protect the champion in defeat, but Swagger actually took the pinfall here, which sadly says a lot. Number 23, Kane. On our ranking of every WWE champion, Kane did very poorly. That's not because we're doubting his status as a legend of the business, but more because he only held the title for a day. One day. So when he eventually won the World Heavyweight title 12 years later, it was a very satisfying moment. Was it better than his 1998 reign? Yes. Was it much better? Kane became the quickest person to cash in their Money in the Bank contract, doing so 47 minutes after winning the briefcase. His victim, an exhausted Rey Mysterio, who had just defended the title against future 5-star wrestling legend Jack Swagger. Not content with being World Heavyweight Champion, Kane also decided to pull double duty as a detective. Undertaker had been beaten into a vegetative state, and the Big Red Machine was determined to find out who did it. After Kane defeated Rey again at SummerSlam, Taker returned to reveal that his attacker had been Kane. We're still struggling to work that one out, to be honest. The Brothers of Destruction then had a feud that was more weird than anything else. Shockingly, Kane beat the Dead Man at Night of Champions, prompting Undertaker to bring back Paul Bearer. You're never going to believe this, but Bearer ended up turning on Taker again. Kane moved into a feud with Edge, another strange one which saw Edge kidnap Bearer and hold him hostage for weeks, despite being the babyface. So yes, it was nice to see Kane finally get a meaningful title reign, but sadly, it was also nice to see it end. Number 22, Dolph Ziggler. We all remember Dolph Ziggler's cash in the night after WrestleMania because it was a genuinely magical moment. The pop when his theme music hit, the intense entrance with Big E and AJ Lee, the emotional in-ring celebration, everything worked perfectly. Unfortunately, this was the high point of Ziggler's time with the belt. He was concussed at a SmackDown taping before he could even make a televised title defense, keeping him out of action for a month. Dolph returned for a rematch against Alberto Del Rio, the man he cashed in on to win the gold. At the fittingly named Payback pay-per-view, Del Rio certainly did gain his revenge, ruthlessly targeting Ziggler's head to end his reign in strangely muted fashion. It was a double turn, and sometimes double turns work in wrestling. That's all I'm going to say. But wait, there's more. It's often forgotten, but Ziggler actually had 2 World Heavyweight Championship reigns, the first coming before his feud with Del Rio. The theme of this reign was bureaucracy, which is as thrilling as it sounds. Vicky Guerrero stripped ex-boyfriend Edge of the title because he used the banned spear, awarding it to Dolph. Then Teddy Long defied Vicky and booked a rematch that same night, which Edge won in 3 minutes. Holla holla, player player. Number 21, Goldberg. If you pretend to have no idea who Goldberg is, his World Heavyweight Championship reign sounds completely run-of-the-mill. He beat Triple H in a career versus title match at Unforgiven 2003, defeated him again at Survivor Series, and lost the belt back to the game at Armageddon. Sounds like any flavor of the month babyface, right? Except we're talking about Goldberg, the guy with the undefeated streak and the entrance and the spear and the jackhammer and the absolute domination of everybody he stepped in the ring with. To put things in perspective, Goldberg came back when he was 50 and beat Brock Lesnar in seconds. So why couldn't a 36-year-old Goldberg do the same to Triple H? Well, it may have had something to do with the fact that he was a WCW icon during the height of animosity between the two promotions. After all, it's all about the game and how you play it. More on that later. Number 20, Big Show. When we first started making this list, it seemed as though Big Show would be nearer the bottom of our rankings. Although a gigantic figure in WWE history, in both a literal and metaphorical sense, he's never fused his star power with elite-level wrestling ability like Austin or Undertaker. However, of Show's 2 World Heavyweight title reigns, the latter certainly had its moments. I mean, the first lasted 45 seconds, which is a little bit of a rubbish effort, to be honest, Paul. Big Show's second reign began at Hell in a Cell 2012, where he beat Sheamus in the match of the night. Yes, we know, Big Show versus Sheamus doesn't exactly scream excitement, especially in a 20-minute singles match, but the pair worked very well together. Unfortunately, WWE did what they sometimes do when they realize 2 superstars have good chemistry. They booked the same match again and again. Show retained against Sheamus at the next 2 pay-per-views, by which time the feud had lost its sparkle. The title was shuffled off to Del Rio on an episode of SmackDown, and the Giant had a well-deserved rest. Number 19, Rey Mysterio. Rey is probably the hardest person to rank on this entire list. His first title reign is regarded as the example of how not to book a world champion, but also began with one of the most emotional victories in WWE history. Rey won the 2006 Royal Rumble from number 2 before outfoxing Kurt Angle and Randy Orton at WrestleMania 22 to win the World Heavyweight Championship. He did so in honor of Eddie Guerrero, a fitting tribute to a close friend of Rey's and a truly beloved figure. Then things started to go wrong. Horrified at a short person holding the heavyweight title, WWE didn't exactly make Mysterio a strong champ. He lost to Mark Henry and Great Khali in the build to his first pay-per-view title defense, and even put over RVD. He also went to a no contest with Sabu at One Night Stand, to which we say, could he not have just beaten Sabu, WWE? Really? It's Sabu. Mysterio's controversial reign ended at the Great American Bash, where he was betrayed by Chavo Guerrero in defeat to Booker T. How's that for a shucky-ducky quack-quack moment? Rey had a second title reign in 2010, where he was booked to look slightly less like a massive loser, and even his first reign did have some positive moments, such as a big victory over JBL. Maybe it wasn't quite as bad as we're all remembering. Apart from the no contest with Sabu, that was bad. Number 18, Sheamus. Sheamus's World Heavyweight Championship reign is the third longest in title history, as the Irishman held the gold for 211 days. It's probably fair to describe this reign as uninspiring, although nothing particularly offensive happened. He feuded with Del Rio and Orton a lot, which admittedly did get a little tiresome, but there were also fresh matchups against the likes of Chris Jericho. He kept a hold of the belt through thick and thin, including a tricky fatal 4-way match at Over the Limit 2012, before losing it to Big Show in that sleeper hit at Hell in a Cell. Not the most spectacular reign, but again, nothing particularly wrong. Oh wait, yes, we forgot to mention that Sheamus won by beating Ultimate Internet darling Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds at WrestleMania 28. That probably didn't get his big babyface title run off to the best start, to be honest. In hindsight, it's hard to know what WWE were thinking at the time. But if that mistake had never been made, Bryan's fanbase might have never rallied with such intensity. Who knows? Number 17, Alberto Del Rio. Alberto Del Rio's a strange one. We could just leave it there and that would probably be a fair analysis, but I suppose we should dig a little deeper. In the context of Del Rio's 2 World Heavyweight title reigns, it's hard to distinguish the good from the bad. After he cleanly defeated Big Show in a last man standing match, WWE seemed fixated on transforming Alberto into the ultimate Latino babyface. In wrestling, some people are natural babyfaces and some people are natural heels. See if you can guess which category the intense, sneering, wealthy Del Rio falls into. Needless to say, it didn't work too well. Still, his matches were often good, especially once he turned heel again. He had interesting feuds with the likes of Christian and RVD, before ultimately losing to John Cena at Hell in a Cell 2013. Talk about destiny all you want, but when Big Match John comes around, you can't escape his fluorescent fury. Number 16, Mark Henry. Before we begin, we feel it's important to stress that Mark Henry is brilliant, and the fact that he finally won a world title after dedicating 15 years of his life to WWE is also brilliant. Okay, you could argue that he won 2 world titles if you count the ECW Championship, and we certainly don't. Henry's path to the World Heavyweight Championship was simple, effective, and very enjoyable. The Attitude Era veteran built up a big head of steam with his ruthless Hall of Pain gimmick and trampled Randall Keith at Night of Champions 2011. He successfully defended it in a Hell in a Cell rematch before moving on to feud with the Big Show and collapsing the goddamn ring. Unfortunately, things fizzled out towards the end of his reign. Henry began to feud with Big Show and Daniel Bryan at the same time, a storyline which sort of made him feel like a third wheel in his own title reign. It all came to an end against Big Show at TLC, but at least it was our favorite stipulation of all time, a chairs match. Number 15, Christian. Some people may disagree with Christian's placement on this list, but as much as everybody loves him, his world title reigns were something of a disappointment. After years of waiting for him to finally win the big one, and after years of watching Edge become one of the biggest stars of the 2000s, we at last saw Christian hold the World Heavyweight Championship for a combined total of 33 days. Still, we've decided to place Christian relatively high because the things he did as champion were superb, and also because from the fans to his opponents to Christian himself, everybody seemed genuinely delighted that he'd finally become world champion. When Edge was sadly forced to retire due to injury, Christian won his vacant championship against Alberto Del Rio at Extreme Rules 2011, with maybe just a little help from Edge, because sometimes it's impossible to escape your tag partner's shadow. He then immediately lost it to Randy Orton on SmackDown, an injustice that continues to burn my soul to this very day. He won the title again as a heel, beating Randall at the now legendary Money in the Bank event. He provoked the Viper to get himself DQ'd with special rules in place, the sneaky little devil. An entertaining feud ensued, but Orton eventually got his revenge at SummerSlam after RKOing Christian out of midair into a set of ring steps. Still, he may have only held the title for a short time, but what an entertaining time it was. Number 14, John Cena. Despite being a babyface version of Marvel's Juggernaut, John Cena only held the World Heavyweight Championship 3 times. That's genuinely quite surprising. He first captured the title at Survivor Series 2008, a controversial booking decision given that he beat Chris Jericho in the midst of a very hot run. To compound everyone's misery, he beat Y2J again at Armageddon, but eventually lost the title in the Elimination Chamber. That was the match where everyone realized, hey, that's John Cena. We should probably work together before he destroys us all. And that's exactly what they all did, blasting him with a 3-finisher combination. He won the championship back at WrestleMania 25, the 24th anniversary of WrestleMania. There he strolled into the middle of Edge and Big Show's love rivalry and walked out with the belt, only to drop it a month later at Backlash. Finally, 4 years later, Cena snatched the title from Del Rio at Hell in a Cell before committing the worst crime in the history of the World Heavyweight Championship. He lost to Randy Orton, causing the belt to be unified with the WWE Championship and subsequently retired. So long, old friend. Number 13, Kurt Angle. If there's one thing we've learned from this list, it's that SmackDown bloody loves a battle royal. Has your champion been forced to vacate the title due to injury? Chuck everyone in the ring and have them throw each other over the top rope. Hooray! Still, it's better than Bischoff simply handing the belt to Triple H. Kurt Angle's sole World Heavyweight title reign came courtesy of this scenario, but at least his entrance in the Battle Royal was a surprise. In a legitimately exciting moment, he last eliminated Mark Henry to scoop the gold. While champion, he even defeated The Undertaker, cleverly pinning him while trapped in a triangle lock. Maybe that was an apology for the American badass absolutely burying Angle during his WWF Championship reign. Ultimately, Angle's reign only lasted a couple of months. He dropped the title to Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania, a match which was really more about Rey defeating Randy Orton. Still, Angle stepped up to the plate when SmackDown needed a top champion and was an effective, if brief, champion. Number 12, Jeff Hardy. Speaking of brief but effective champions, Jeff Hardy spent 4 weeks with the World Heavyweight Championship. That's about as long as it takes Jack to grow a patch of stubble. Regardless, Jeff's time with the World Heavyweight title birthed one of the best feuds in SmackDown history as he clashed with his polar opposite, CM Punk. Hardy beat Edge in an exciting ladder match at Extreme Rules 2009, only for Punk to cash in on him immediately. It was one of the more exciting, if brief, cash-ins, as Jeff almost scored a roll-up on Punk despite his state of exhaustion. We'll talk a little more about that feud later on, but it all culminated in a wonderful main event at SummerSlam, where Jeff lost the title and left for TNA a few months later. It's fair to say that he didn't have the best time in TNA, but he made a heroic return in 2017 alongside brother Matt. In fact, after this video, go and watch their WrestleMania 33 entrance again. You know you want to. Number 11, Shawn Michaels. Speaking of brief but effective champions, wait, we've said that already. Still, Shawn Michaels' 28-day reign may have been short, but it did help add a dose of much-needed prestige to the new championship. HBK miraculously returned to wrestling in the summer of 2002, defeating Triple H in a brutal street fight. We know you won, Shawn, but maybe you shouldn't have worn your jeans. Think of the mobility issues. Think of the chafing. Michaels' momentum continued to Survivor Series, where he won the first ever Elimination Chamber match. It all came down to the former best friends, and to the delight of everybody inside Madison Square Garden, Shawn was able to escape the pedigree, nail a sweet chin music, and become the second ever World Heavyweight Champion. Now, you might be thinking that Triple H would get his win back before long. That's not quite... No, that's exactly what happened. The game faced HBK in a 3 stages of hell match at Armageddon and beat him to reclaim the title. Why did you have to do that, Hunter? He was just a sexy boy. Number 10, King Booker. Remember when Booker T won the King of the Ring tournament and took it a little bit too seriously? Booker's stint as King Booker led to a World Heavyweight Championship reign, and although it might not have produced his best work from an in-ring standpoint, it was certainly an entertaining time. His Majesty was fortunate to win the belt in the first place, beating Rey Mysterio thanks to a shocking swerve from Chavo Guerrero. He then retained in heelish fashion against Batista at SummerSlam SummerSlam 2006, but is said to have absolutely battered him in real life. That's one backstage fight we'd like to see on pay-per-view. As SmackDown's major title holder, Booker won a triple threat against the champions of Raw and ECW at Cyber Sunday. That sounds impressive given that he beat John Cena and The Big Show, but he only won thanks to a run-in from Kevin Federline. Without K-Fed around to watch his back full-time, King Booker eventually lost the title to Batista at Survivor Series. It's probably fair to say that he had an entertaining reign and made the most of it despite some questionable booking. Still, it can't be considered the best part of Booker's career, which was, of course, being beaten up by Steve Austin in a supermarket. Number 9, Daniel Bryan. From Booker T, let's now take a look at his boy, D-Bry. When Daniel Bryan won the World Heavyweight Championship, it felt like a truly transcendent moment. One of the biggest internet darlings in the history of independent wrestling, signing with WWE, overcoming various obstacles, and winning a major championship. It's the sort of fantasy booking that would get ridiculed on Reddit for being too far-fetched. But that's exactly what happened at TLC 2011, and yes, Bryan may have cashed in on an unconscious Big Show, but it was still a seismic booking decision. It's not just that Bryan was a massively popular indie star, he was also a massively indie star. The short stature, the technical style, the burgundy ring gear, everything about him screamed wrestling, not sports entertainment. And yet, in the midst of his World Heavyweight title reign, Bryan delivered an excellent gradual heel turn. He celebrated excessively, even when winning via DQ. He was rude to girlfriend AJ Lee, he obnoxiously chanted yes over and over and over again. That last one would become important later on. Ultimately, the end of Bryan's reign is more memorable than the rest of it. Sheamus beat him in 18 seconds at WrestleMania, the catalyst to his incredible rise in popularity over the next few years. It may have been infuriating at the time, but next time you watch an NXT takeover and wonder who started this exciting indie revolution, look no further than Big Sheamus. Number 8, Chris Benoit. There are many bittersweet moments in wrestling, but the ending of WrestleMania 20 might be the most difficult of all. Having won the World Heavyweight title in the main event, Chris Benoit celebrated with WWE champion and close friend Eddie Guerrero. Two of the most talented wrestlers of their generation, and two stars outside the classic WWE mold, reaching the top of the industry together. Of course, the tragic events of the next few years would change this moment forever, especially the circumstances surrounding Chris Benoit's death in 2007. It's harder to watch these days, but Benoit versus Michaels versus Triple H is one of the best WrestleMania main events to date. It's often forgotten, but the trio put on an excellent rematch at Backlash, with HBK submitting this time instead of the game. It really seemed as though WWE was set to push Benoit hard, only for things to take a strange turn. He engaged in simultaneous feuds with La Resistance and Kane before beating Triple H again with the help of Eugene. It sounds like when you let Universe Mode book itself, but we swear that's what actually happened. Finally, Benoit lost to a very young Randy Orton, passing the torch before he'd really carried it for very long. Number 7, CM Punk. Daniel Bryan held the title for a few months, and his reign was full of good character work. Chris Benoit held the title for a few months, and his reign was full of good wrestling. CM Punk held the title for a few months, and his reign was full of good character work and good wrestling. That's why we've put him above them on this list. Just a little window into our creative process there. It's complex stuff, this list writing. Punk's 3 reigns came in the late 2000s, before he evolved into the voice of the voiceless and inspired a generation of aggressively sarcastic people on Twitter. You know the ones with real-life heel in their bio. His first 2 reigns came via cash-in, but the third is where things really got interesting. Having finally snapped and dropped his friendly babyface act, Punk won the gold back from Jeff Hardy in an excellent SummerSlam main event. What followed was Punk's real heel turn, driving Jeff out of the company, coming out dressed like him to taunt the fans, and insulting the fans for their sinful ways. Sadly, just as it was picking up steam, Punk's final reign came to an end at the hands of The Undertaker. The match itself was weirdly average, especially as it was inside Hell in a Cell, but luckily the backstage rumors are more interesting. Reports emerged years later suggesting that Punk only lost the title due to a disagreement with the dead man. Rumor has it that Taker told the champ to start dressing better, only for Punk to say, "What about John Cena?" who, as we all know, loves to dress as a child dressing as John Cena. If the story is to be believed, it brought a sadly straightforward end to a very promising title run. Number 6, Chris Jericho. Of all the wrestlers on this list who deserve to see more of the World Heavyweight Championship, Chris Jericho could well be the most deserving of them all. Y2J occupied an interesting position during his time in the title picture. He was still a hugely popular star of the Attitude Era, but deliberately did everything he could to generate heat. He stripped away his flashy outfits and came to the ring in suits. He even changed his speech pattern, making his promos more monotonous and droning. It was so fascinating, we just wish Jericho could have held the belt for longer than 109 days. His 3 reigns saw some brilliant bouts and storylines, most notable the excellent ladder match against HBK at No Mercy 2008. He also played a key role in Michaels' legendary feud with The Undertaker, benefiting from Shawn's interference to take the gold from the dead man at Elimination Chamber. I'd argue that this period was the high point of Jericho's career, but it's a difficult argument to make because he's had multiple career highs. WCW Cruiserweight Jericho, Raw is Jericho, suit-wearing Jericho, even New Japan Mega Heel Jericho, the list goes on. Oh, that reminds me, the list of Jericho as well. Number 5, Randy Orton. I think you know what's coming. Na 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 na. Randall Keith, Randall Keith. These days, Randy Orton is sort of the John Cena Antichrist, the ever-present company veteran who seems really bored by it. But once upon a time, back in 2004, Orton was a fresh-faced youngster. So young, in fact, that after beating Chris Benoit at SummerSlam, he became the youngest world champion in WWE history. He was 24, that's outrageous. If you're watching this and you're 24 or younger, we all sincerely hate you. Orton's victory was impressive, but his reign wasn't the best. He was kicked out of Evolution by a jealous Triple H, and his babyface run didn't take off as WWE may have hoped. Maybe because look at 2004 Randy Orton. Have you ever seen more of a natural heel? Randall didn't win the title again until May 2011. By this stage, he was a very different Viper, having gone through his Legend Killer phase and his shaven-headed Voldemort phase. Now he was a babyface again, having ditched Legacy, but angered fans by taking the title from lovely little Christian on SmackDown. Orton accumulated 4 wins before the belt was retired while in his possession, having beaten John Cena to unify WWE's top championships. He must be regarded as a significant figure in the title's history. The youngest, the last, and maybe the most selfless champion, getting the most out of underappreciated figures like Christian and Mark Henry during his time with the belt. Number 4, The Undertaker. We all know about The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, but we want to talk about the streak within the streak, streakception if you prefer. Within Taker's unbeaten run, there's a similar streak of unbelievably good matches. It stretches from Batista at WrestleMania 23 to Punk at 29, and that run of form was kickstarted by the Dead Man's first World Heavyweight title win. After taming the animal, it would take something special to dislodge The Undertaker from his perch as champion, or something cheap and sneaky, as Edge cashed in a month later. Taker would get revenge the following year, defeating Edge in another excellent WrestleMania clash, but was stripped of the title by Vicky Guerrero shortly afterwards. It seems as though Taker would always win the belt in thrilling fashion, only to lose it in a disappointing manner. That was reversed for his final reign, as he beat CM Punk in that boring Hell in a Cell match, only to lose it in maybe the most intense Elimination Chamber of all time. Look at Shawn, look at his funny street clothes. He looks like... wait a second. Number 3, Batista. In a very straightforward fashion, Batista may be the superstar people most associate with the World Heavyweight Championship. The animal didn't jazz up his title reigns by pretending to be a king or a zombie or straight edge, whatever that means. Instead, Batista would simply kick ass and take names, usually with minimal fuss. It was generally exciting to watch, never more so than his first title win at WrestleMania 21. There, Batista defeated Triple H in an intense main event, kickstarting a 282-day reign. He also became double champion for a while, holding tag gold alongside best friend Rey Mysterio. Sadly, his reign would be cut short by a legitimate tricep injury, forcing him to vacate the gold. Batista never enjoyed a reign as good again, partly because strange things kept getting in the way. Strange things like Punjabi prison matches or Mr. Kennedy. He still provided some great matches though, especially a classic showdown with The Undertaker Undertaker at WrestleMania 23. Batista did do his best Y2J impression and save _us from Great Khali's title reign. Dave, you beautiful large man, we are eternally grateful. Number 2, Triple H. It will come as a surprise to absolutely nobody that Triple H spent the longest time with the World Heavyweight Championship. For 616 days, the game plodded across the Raw landscape, striking down babyface after babyface with his big sledgehammer. Actually, 616 days doesn't sound so long in hindsight. In the memories of many fans, Triple H seemed to hold the belt forever, and just when it looked as though somebody was about to beat him, one of Evolution would pop up and rob them of victory. Still, there's a point to all of this. Without heels like Triple H, babyface victories would mean far less. Yes, it's nice to see your favourite win a world title, but that feeling is made all the more sweeter when they beat a real villain in the process. It's the very fabric of wrestling. Triple H's losses to Michaels, Benoit, and Batista made for some of the most exciting moments in the belt's history. Yes, sometimes he won it back a little too quickly, as in the case of Goldberg, and yes, sometimes he beat people he shouldn't have, such as Booker T. Maybe WWE could have scrapped some of the feud's more racial overtones as well. Just a thought. But on the whole, the game's title reign served a very important purpose. Without them, the World Heavyweight Championship would have never reached the level it did and never become an accepted alternative to the WWE title. Maybe we'll look back on Lesnar's Universal title reigns in a similar way. Then again, maybe we absolutely won't. Number 1, Edge. The numbers tell us that Edge has had the most World Heavyweight title reigns out of anyone. He held the title 7 times between 2007 and his retirement in 2011. It's certainly impressive, but it's not the reason he's at the top of our list. Edge was such an exciting champion because he seemed to exist outside the rules of wrestling. His ultimate opportunist persona made him the focal point of various innovative storylines. In his time as champion or part of the title picture, Edge did all of the following. He switched brands unannounced to cash in a Money in the Bank contract, then just refused to leave. He lost the WWE title in one Elimination Chamber match, forced his way into another, and won the World Heavyweight title in the same night. He beat Jeff Hardy after help from his mortal enemy, who also happened to be his opponent's brother. He won and lost the title on the same episode of SmackDown at the expense of Dolph Ziggler, and last but not least, he once won the title from John Cena after Big Show interfered and chokeslammed John Cena through a giant spotlight. Look at that! Yes, as you can probably tell by this point, when Edge was World Heavyweight Champion, it was best to expect the unexpected. It also helped that the Rated R superstar was a great wrestler and an even better heel, bringing a legitimate sense of prestige to the Gold through his infuriating charisma. In terms of pure character similarity, he may be the closest thing we've had to Attitude Era Shawn Michaels. It was therefore nice to see Edge given a babyface run with the Gold towards the end of his career. He'd given us so much in being SmackDown's ultimate bad guy, it was nice to send him on his way with cheers rather than boos. So that's our list. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.